Call the meeting to order. Say the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we got 2 items to add to the agenda under ordinances and resolutions. D, resolution authorizing advertising for bids for West Sixth Street Railroad Crossing Project. And letter E, resolution establishing the County Highway 5 water line project.
I'll move approval of adding these to the agenda.
I'll second.
Thank you. All in favor? Do you have to
Aye.
say that?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, carried. Roll call.
Councilmember Wallers,
Yes.
Salvi,
Yes.
Miller, Gullickson,
Yes.
Mayor Geese.
Any citizens' comments? Anybody in the audience?
Oh, no. Just came in from that way.
Okay. No public
Change
hearings
things up.
tonight, so we'll go forward with the reading and approval of the minutes.
I'll move approval of the regular meeting minutes from 7:13.
I will second.
And I will approve the minutes of the condensed version from 7:13.
We better vote on the
We have to vote on those too? Sorry,
Yeah.
I thought it
Yep,
was just the
Individually.
individually, yep.
individually, okay. For the regular meeting minutes, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carried. Now, for the condensed version of the minutes, I'll move approval of those for July 13th.
I'll second that.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Now, move approval of the consent agenda, which includes the audit of city bills, the gambling report, and the July 16th tree board minutes. And I'll move approval of those.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Any
Aye.
discussion?
Oh.
first
Any
of all?
discussion? Yep, sorry.
None for me. Right.
No, I'm fine.
You're good? Okay.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Petitions, requests, and communications. Something from Prairie Pioneer Days.
Yeah, so I'm looking for a motion from the city council to authorize $10,000 from the lodging tax for a fireworks show for Prairie Pioneer Days, which is also going to be the 150th anniversary of the city celebration. Normally, we invite the Eagles to be part of that process, and I talked to Mike Seahawk, and they allocated their funding towards the softball complex project, I believe, this year. And so they wouldn't be able to participate, so we would just pay for all of that out of the lodging tax fund. And that's just a motion.
I'll make a motion authorizing $10,000 for the fireworks show for Prairie Pioneer Days.
I'll second.
Okay, any discussion there?
Should be a whoop-de-doo.
Yeah, and you done all in favor there? Or just as a,
Yeah, just all in favor, yeah.
all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Ordinances and resolutions. The first one is a resolution accepting a quit-claim deed from Riley Brothers Property LLC.
Yeah, this is for the commercial development where Grand Stay is and Heartland Motors. And what this is the city accepting a quitclaim deed to turn over the storm sewer ponds, the property that the storm sewer ponds sit on, from Riley Brothers commercial development company to the city. And this was part of the agreement, part of the process that took place with regards to the development of that entire area there. And for some reason, when everything got platted and recorded at the recorder's office, it got put in their name. And we've actually been maintaining the sewer ponds. That was part of the agreement that we had, taking care of those sewer ponds. So this just basically some paperwork to clear up the ownership of that as far as taxes going. We're tax exempt, so we don't actually pay taxes on the property that we have. And Aaron had a chance to look it over, and it was drawn up by Riley's attorney.
So that just relieves them of any kind of responsibility to maintain that at all, and it all kind of just goes back to us, which we've been doing anyway, so.
We've been doing it anyway, and it's a unique, normally these storm sewer ponds are the responsibility of the property owners, but in this big, that big commercial development had a lot of aspects to it, with the tax abatement and the transfer of ownership of property between Heartlands and Superior and development of this property and all that. And so these storm sewer ponds basically take everything that's in that development area into the ponds before they come back out and go into the system that takes that water away. And like I said, at the time that we talked about the development of this whole area, we wanted to make sure, and obviously there's legal requirements for making sure all the stormwater runs into the right place. But there's not a lot of maintenance that's involved with those. Jim and the guys have been watching over it.
Yeah, so it's just kind of, when it reaches a certain level, it just discharges, huh?
That's the way it works. And they're built, to a standard, and of course, right now there's not a lot of water going into them.
Right. I guess I can move on that resolution accepting a quick claim deed from Riley Brothers LLC to, I guess according to the recorded plat.
I'll second. Okay, any discussion on that? Further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
The roll call vote.
Oh,
Yeah.
this one roll call
Yeah,
for, okay.
resolutions, we'll do a roll call.
Okay, so we'll have a roll call vote.
Councilmember Miller, Wallers,
Yes.
Galby,
Yes.
Gullickson, Mayor
Yes.
McGee.
Then it's just accepted.
Yep.
Yep.
Okay. The ordinance, resolution adopting the assessment for current services.
This is one for utility bills for the Morris Grand Hotel. They've been given notice, and actually one of the things the finance department has been dealing with is during the COVID pandemic, there were a lot of rules and regulations that were put in place with regards to whether or not rents had to be paid, utilities had to be paid, and things like that. And now with the doing away of the emergency situation that the state had going on, we've been working with utility customers that owed money on their utility bills. And actually in Morris, rental property owners are required to be responsible for utility bills, even though we do allow the bills to be sent out to the tenants, and the tenants a lot of times pay them. And we've been working with property owners, rental property owners that have back utility bills, and I think most of them have been getting paid up now. But this is for the hotel out there, and we know and understand that it was originally supposed to be sold on a sheriff's auction, I think, this month. And then I think that got postponed to September. But we want to make sure, and we've given notice to the owner that the bills need to be paid now. And I don't believe we've shut off that property yet. but these bills haven't been paid, and so we want to get them filed on the property tax rolls. You know, so that if and when something happens with that property, we'll get our money out of it.
Blaine, I have a question on that, the way it's, the date on there. Of course, the assessment, for current services is $5,334.95. And I read in there that it's on, payable on or before the first Monday in January 23rd. Is that date correct? I mean, why are we assessing now and then not payable until January of 23?
It's kind of complicated how it works, but an assessment is different than a bill. So an assessment goes on taxes, and then taxes are only put on to the tax rolls at certain times during the year. So this will be filed with the treasurer up at the courthouse to put it on to the tax rolls. And then it's language that's actually put in state law as to when you actually allocate that bill. So if you have an assessment, you have certain periods according to law when you can pay them off, and then after that period, there's other things that happen like interest. So typically, an assessment is allocated to a property for a particular year, and we run into problems all the time because people will come in to pay off their assessment, and you've already got more interest because you didn't pay it by the normal time that you're supposed to pay it. So these are kind of odd dates, but that's why it's different than normal. It officially becomes due and payable on that date, even though it's due and payable now. You know,
So why would they pay, why would they pay it now if they have until Monday in January 23rd?
well, you might not want to pay it, but the big thing for us is that once we assess it to the property, that property cannot get sold without that being taken care of.
Okay,
That's the point that we're making right now.
okay,
So there's gonna be an assessment, it's gonna be, and then if they don't pay it by that date, then there's some other implications that happen.
I follow you.
Yeah,
All right, thanks for clearing
and
that
that's
up.
one of the reasons why we require that all of the utility bills be in the property owner's, not the tenant's name, because then we have the ability to do that.
Right.
Right. I'll move on the resolution adopting assessments for current services.
I will second.
We'll do a roll call vote on that.
Councilmember Salvi,
Yes.
Miller, Wallers,
Yes,
Gullickson,
Yes.
Mayor Gies.
Okay. Resolution adopting a public right-of-way ADA transition plan dated today.
And then just so you know, Kim, I brought a full copy of that. It's sitting right there on the corner if you want to take a look at. It's 91 pages long, and it has a lot of technical data and pictures and all kinds of stuff in there. So one of the requirements that came out with the Federal Highway Administration, when we look at federal money and state money, actually the state of Minnesota and state aid funding, is that you either have to have in place ADA transition plan for all your property, and you may recall that when we got into this, we were talking about every corner in Morris, you know, everything has been looked at, even though we don't have a requirement to fix every corner in Morris at this time. And we know that through all the projects that we've been doing, that when you get into state aid road projects and federal money projects, you're gonna have to make all those ADA changes that are required. So if you don't have a plan in place, but you're working on one, you're gonna have to have it in place before they release your federal money. And we just went ahead and we had all the survey work done, all the study work done, met all the requirements of this, and the last thing that we need to do is just adopt this ADA transition plan, and we'll utilize that when the time comes to be able to show the federal and state government that we've done this. And actually, one of the things I've mentioned before is that we are looking at a potential federal transportation project for East 7th Street going out to the bypass. Jeff Kuhn's working on that for probably in the next couple of years. There's some funding that's been been identified and potentially available, and we're taking a look at that, and this would need to be in place before we got federal money. And you may recall too, on Oregon Avenue, we got a chunk of federal money, you know, through the federal transportation process. So this is a requirement. We've got it done, and the last step is to adopt it.
I think it's good to be proactive and get this in position, so when the funds become available, we're ready. I'll move on that resolution, adopting the City of Morris ADA transition plan.
I'll second.
Okay, any further discussion on that? And we'll do a roll call vote?
Councilmember Waller,
Yes.
Salvi,
Yes.
Miller, Gullikson,
Yes.
Mayor Case.
Okay, and the two additions, a resolution authorizing advertising for bids for West Sixth Street Railroad Crossing Project.
Yeah, you've pretty much been involved with that. The next step in that project, we've been in contact with Burlington Northern. It looks like they're potentially looking at doing that crossing sometime this fall later. And, you know, as you know, they asked us if we wanted to get rid of West Sixth Street and totally get rid of it. And the answer was no. And so then there were some things that we needed to do to facilitate them updating their crossing arms to include a sidewalk on the north side of the crossing arm. And so this is the project to do all that, and so I'm recommending that you allow us to advertise for bids for this with the bid opening. I believe it's August 26th at 11:30 in the morning, and then we'll bring it back to the city council at the next council meeting that we have. And the funding for that is gonna have to be through probably the capital outlay fund or capital improvement fund. There is no funding source right now that we've identified that we could use for that, other than, you know, some internal funding that we're looking at doing. And it's just one of those things that we have to do.
So basically, Blaine is just putting a sidewalk on the north side of the crossing arms?
No,
That's
it's
what that-
it's
there's a lot
actually
more than that.
it's actually redoing the parking lot exit and entrance on the two parking lots there. So those openings are going to be redone a little bit to make them facilitate the approaches to the railroad crossing. There is no curb and gutter on the south side where the empty lot is, so there's going to be curb and gutter put in to basically provide. It's just going to make that intersection for the railroad crossing cleaner, so everybody knows where it is. And there is a sidewalk on the south side already, you know, that brings people down there, but then you come across on the west side of the railroad tracks, and then it's kind of wide open. Anybody can drive up anywhere on there, and so it'll lead in better to the railroad crossing and just define it better and make sure that we have all the right things in place infrastructure wise. And it had to be satisfied through the Burlington Northern people, and actually the state of Minnesota Department of Transportation got involved with it because they oversee, you know, railroad crossings and things like that. So everybody agreed this is the right way to do that whole crossing area.
Any cost estimate, Blaine, on the project at all?
Yeah, I think, did I attach
Yeah.
it to that? I don't have,
Second part of it.
I never brought my copy.
120,000.
I think it's 120 grand
Okay.
all total. And then obviously there'll be some road work that'll have to be put to make sure that the road service and everything is tied into everything that's there.
Sure you don't wanna shut it down?
Well, they would have offered us a chunk of money to do that, but you would have to close everything off on probably Sixth Street coming in to where the parking lots are, and obviously going across, you'd have to put a curb in along Pacific Avenue or maybe a driveway to
Sure.
get in, you know, how do you get into Meadowland Market then?
Yeah, you'd have to
With
look.
that
Not from
road
Sixth
or,
Street,
or
no.
just, you know, you'd have to block it off somehow. You know, you could probably put up just a big roadblock, but, that's a intersection that's used a lot. There's a lot of people that come through there different ways.
I'll move on the resolution authorizing advertising for the bid for the West Sixth Street Railroad Crossing project.
I'll second. Any further discussion on that? And we'll do a roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Wallers,
Yes.
Selby,
Yes.
Miller, Gullickson,
Yes.
Mayor Eads.
And another resolution, establishing County Highway 5 water line project.
So we've talked about this a number of times before, I think, too, and at one point we talked with the county about this, but, you may have read in the paper 2 weeks ago that the county board was talking about their well issue with the new county garage and what they need to do. They do have sewer there at the county garage, but they don't have water, and we've talked about this over the years, you know, what it would take to bring water and up to that area, and actually, we do have water up to the driveway coming into the Heartland area when the new commercial development took place. And so what we're looking at is, this establishes a project to look at running a water line from that end of the water system that we have up along County 5 up to Northridge Drive. And then we would, in the future, have a better capability of linking up Northridge Drive. You know, they do have water that's, goes past the experiment station there. And at some point in the future, we may want to link that up. And actually, when we did the zoning update, you know, we changed that whole area to residential from what it was, and so that potentially could be a place to expand in the future. And so what we're looking at is we're looking at running a water main up through there that could service, and actually I talked to Kirk Riley, Jim Riley and Sons would be interested in connecting up with that. I talked to Brian Cruzy, when the co-op built up there, they actually put in their own well, they put in their own you know, treatment system for water, they put in their own septic system for dealing with sewer there, but originally they wanted to have water, but there was no water line up there, and so this brings a water line up to that intersection. The interesting part about it is, and the original estimate was probably around $110,000 to do this. You're looking at maybe a 8 to 10 inch water main. But this is maybe one of those things that we can use the American Recovery Act money for, because they're gonna allow you to use it for infrastructure. And one of the things we finally learned today, we think, we did get our first half payment of the American Recovery Act money, and it was $282,000, so that's probably half of what we're gonna get. So we're looking at $560,000 that we're probably gonna get. The second half will come in 1 year, so that money's in the bank already, and we can utilize that for infrastructure projects. They've specifically talked about water, sewer, things like that. There's a lot of different ways cities are gonna use it, so that might be a funding source for this. As well as I reached out to Rebecca Young and talked to her about, you know, Jeff Kuhn will sit down and figure out what the potential charges might be to a property owner to hook up to that main. We know what it is for residential properties, because we've been kind of keeping a rolling average of everything that's done. This is very unique in that, you know, the oversizing of a pipe would be our responsibility anyway, versus what a property owner might need. And we want to oversize it so that it'll be there for the future to connect up the system. At the same time, there's only potentially 2 connections, so you can't make them pay for it, and there's a way to try to figure out what it's worth to them and what they're willing to pay, and we'll work all that out. But the first step is to to create this project, and then we'll find out what all that information is and get the plans done up, and then we'll probably look at bidding this out as quick as we can, because I know the county's starting to build their garage, and I think they're very interested in getting city water, and it just makes sense for them to get city water in that county shop.
Those residents or homeowners on Northridge, they currently have their own well, right?
The ones that are beyond the pavement, I believe, have their own wells and septic tanks.
Otherwise, our water comes in by Bill or Superior there and comes down.
Right,
Right. Okay. Do they have city sewer too?
yes.
They do. Okay.
And, was the county interested in participating in this, or is will it be our expense?
No, they'll participate depending on what we ask them to participate in. They're not gonna pay to bring, they wouldn't pay to bring the line in. You know, obviously, we had that discussion before, but, you know, we will look at what the factors are. You know, we'll pay for the oversizing for sure. And then, I mean, you can't make them, in a normal assessment, like we're working on the East Sixth Street and Columbia Avenue and Iowa Avenue, you can't make property owners pay more for an assessment than what the benefit is to the property. That's the challenge that we have. And, you know, the rolling average right now for a water assessment, I think is right around $4,200. You know, but then they're looking at putting in a well, and there are some kind of mitigating factors in this, you know, where it's at and all those kind of things. Their property is a little bit bigger, and we'll just work it out with them. So they'll pay something, Riley's will pay something, and then, you know, we'll go from there. Because what we can do too is we can always keep in mind anybody else in the future that wants to connect to that will have to pay to connect to it, you know, and we can charge them for that. So it's not like there's a water line there and I can just automatically tap into it because it happens to be there. You're gonna be paying for it, and the oversizing of it, because we're gonna maybe expand into another neighborhood, we can capture that cost too, and then roll that into a potential assessment for, let's say, a future assessment project. If somebody buys a chunk of land, wants to develop some residential property in that area that's currently designated for residential property, then you'd figure out how you bring water and sewer in.
So is it gonna stay, just go, it's on the east side of the highway, and then stay on the east side of 5 up to Northridge? Is that where you're not?
It'll probably cross under 5 and then stay on the west side,
It will.
and then
Okay.
go all the way up.
And then
to
go
north.
up the.
And that's one of the things that they'll look at.
Okay.
They'll look at the best way to do that. And, you know, the nice part, somebody asked if we're gonna run it up the state ditch where the sewer is, and it's like, well, you run into a lot of issues with the state of Minnesota and doing projects and stuff like that. But ideally, you know, you have a house that's kitty corner from where this connection is gonna end, and they're on well water and have a septic tank, and they may be interested in trying to find a way to get that water to start coming down Northridge, and that's something that we can look at, because eventually that's what the plan is to connect it up, and then we'd have a loop going all the way around in there.
And
Do
is that
those-
what this whole, is that what this whole project is looking at? Is this the small piece of
We're
it
just
that's
looking at
there?
going up to the
5,
next
okay.
intersection.
So
And the
main
reason
fo-
for that is funding.
The main focus then right now is the county really.
Yep, getting
water
it by
to
the county garage.
And then down the road, if Northridge residents wanna tap in, they can, if I'm understanding that correctly?
We'd have to do it, you know, and just as a quick offshoot discussion, you know, I've had 2 questions come to me on 7th Street, you know, because people are, you know, typically what happens is somebody will run into a problem with their septic tank and say, when is the city finally gonna bring me water and sewer on 7th Street? And my usual response is when the people on 7th Street petition to have the city bring them water and sewer, because you're gonna have to pay for it. That's how it works. You know, and we had that same issue over by Pomni Terre, you know, where there's a neighborhood that has wells and septic tanks, and I think at that time, there's 3 of them that went bad at one time, and the neighbors got together and looked at that, but in order to do a water and sewer project like that, you have to have people petition to have it done, or we wind up creating an assessment project like we're doing right now with East 6th Street and North Columbia Avenue. We'll put that together, we'll figure out what it's gonna cost, we'll figure out what the assessments are gonna be, and we'll present it to the people to find out what they feel about it. And then if they reject it, then you don't do it, you know, because you don't have the ability to just go ahead and assess them. The last assessment project we did, I think we sent out 110 notices and we had about 10 people show up. So it gives you a pretty good indication that people want to see water and sewer and road projects and stuff like that happen. But the longer the distances are with the fewer connection, the more difficult it is. That's why 7th Street is so difficult, because there's not a lot of quick connections that are made there. And then actually you have cul-de-sacs that come off 7th Street. You know, whereas Northridge Drive, there's a bunch of bigger lots, and they already have wells and septics, and whether or not they're interested. But it's probably gonna take a development project of some size to maybe get that done, or the city just looks at doing what we're doing now and thinking about investing in, putting in a line that, you know, we're gonna be able to try to connect up our systems better in the future.
They're not in the city limits out there, so would they have to be annexed in
They may have to be,
if they were gonna get,
you know, that's it, you know, I've actually waffled on that question.
I know it's down the road, but I think we should have that discussion now.
I
so
think
we know.
Ryan Mogard had suggested to me that, you know, like the co-op, you know, they'd be a customer, and you wanna sell water or not? You know, and that could be a way to look at it. You know, we have more
Right.
customers, but at the same time, then, you know, what do they pay for it? Because the city pays part of it, you know, and that's where the problem comes in. You know, if we're paying part of this, why would we pay for part of it for somebody that's not in the city limits? You know, what is the benefit of that property owner? It's a greater benefit if they're not actually a taxpayer, because the unassessed city share gets paid through either the water fund or the sewer fund, or it could be that it's through a bond that's sold that the city winds up paying back. But that's something that we can look at. Utility rates pay for a lot of that cost, you know, and so that might be a good argument for, you know, if you wanna sell water, sell water.
Where is the city limits line out on Northridge? Is it actually the road?
It's right on the road.
Right on
That's
the road,
always,
okay.
that's always been something that's kinda,
Yeah, I was just.
I would say
I mean, if
everything
there, I mean,
to,
if there's gonna be, you know, if there's development to the south of that road, which there could be quite a bit, actually, it would be nice to have something already in place out there.
yeah, it's university land right now,
Yeah.
research land, you know, so they crop it. But it's zoned for that, that's a potential area for development of housing.
Right.
Yeah, and this doesn't commit us to a lot of cost. What it does is it gives us the ability to look at what that project would look like, and then the next step would be bring it back with a more realistic cost estimate, and then we would advertise it for bids if it looks good. And then part of that's gonna be a discussion with the county on what we think a potential assessment's gonna be to them, and whether they pay it up front or pay, well, they don't really pay taxes, but pay it through an assessment. Same way with Jim Riley and Sons, whether or not they'd be interested in just paying for that connection right up front.
It seems like we have to start somewhere with this, and so this resolution is just looking at that, seeing where we need to establish that water line and who's involved and whatnot, so, I'll move on that resolution establishing County Highway 5 water line project.
I will second.
Any further discussion? Okay, we'll do a roll call vote on that.
Councilmember Miller, Wallers,
Yes.
Selby,
Yes.
Tillotson,
Yes.
Mayor Keys.
Okay, city managers report. I guess there's only one.
Well, we got
Budget guidance.
Budget.
the budget guidance, so, and I'm not gonna go through this whole document, I never do. The key items in here, and one of the things I indicated up front is, I actually made the statement in many aspects, this is a great year for budgeting. And the reason I say that is because there's more stuff done this year, so we know the answers than probably in most of the years since I've been here. Because the legislature's done, local government aid is solid, the state is in a very good budget position right now. I think the last revenue forecast that came out, there's still, $2.5 billion in surplus and everything. We got all of our labor contracts done, so we know what labor is. There's only a few things that we don't know right now. One of them is health insurance. We don't know what that's gonna be, and we'll find out probably sometime in September or October what health insurance is gonna be. And so really the key points to this, and what I would say is, if there's anything you want added to this, list of things that we're looking at doing in the budget, let me know now, or just let me know, because really it's just the initial guidance for doing the budget, and then department heads will come and they'll bring all their things that they want. But the biggest one is the tax levy. So right now I'm recommending, if you remember last year, I recommended that we freeze everything, we look at potential major cuts, all that kind of stuff, and that's all gone. But the idea is, and I've always said, the idea is to be around 3% when you get into December, for a tax increase. But for planning purposes, I'm looking at anywhere from 3 to 7%. You can always cut it back, but you can never add to it. And that just gives us the flexibility to look at some of the additional things that we've talked about, that we might want to consider in a budget. And then, like I said, labor contracts are done. All those things are already in place, so we know all that information. And the process is that by September, we have to have our preliminary levy into the county, and our preliminary budget done. And between then and December, we have to come up with the final levy and the final budget. The only thing different this year is that the legislature, in their infinite wisdom, decided that people needed a whole bunch more information that they aren't going to be able to understand, and we're going to have to provide it to them in the truth and taxation information that's going to send out. So one of the requirements that we're going to have as a city is we're going to have to provide them budget information on the current budget year and what's in the 2022 budget. I don't know how they're going to do that. I haven't seen all the information we have to provide, but you've seen our budgets. They're not easy to understand. I can't imagine what the school is going to be doing to try to provide that budget information, because I sat on a school board before. But you're going to get something in the mail that's going to have budget information in it, and more than likely you're not going to understand what it even means. What people want to know is, what are you doing to my taxes? How much are my taxes going to go up? And that's what I focus on. So, but that is an additional requirement we have for the 2022 budget, is we're going to have to provide budget information to the county to send out in truth and taxation hearing notices. And then there's some of the standard stuff that's in there. I don't know if there's anything else I want to highlight. If you had a chance to look at it, if you have any questions, let me know. There's some equipment in there. There's some, we did get our certified LGA for next year. It's about $12,000 more. than what it was for this year. So we finally got that number this last week. So that was good to know. We still try to maintain a capital outlay transfer. You know, we're looking at some equipment issues with regards to the normal stuff that we do, whether it's a police car or other vehicles. But, you know, the street sweeper kind of rises to the important one this year. And we talk about a playground set for this year. The park board's looking at trying to do something for East Side Park. Last year we did Green River Park, and some of those kind of ongoing things that we're trying to establish. So, any questions?
I'll move approval of the 2022 budget guidance recommendation.
Second. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Carried. Okay, now city manager newsletter.
Yeah, and I'll just throw it out and see if, I talked about a bunch of them, but see if you have any questions on it.
The American, or the Recovery Act money, we're gonna use some for that water line. I know that the county has been in discussions with daycare issues and using some money for that. Is there any, can we use that for that if we wanted to help with that a little bit, or can we not use that? I don't know for sure if the county can use that money for it. Maybe I could defer to you, Aaron. Do you know?
We're having some discussions about it. I'm not aware of the full extent of it, though. I haven't been privy to all of that.
Yeah.
Well, I think the answer would be if they think they can use it, then we could use it.
Right.
But if you're gonna do something together, then the question is, how would you do that together?
I hear
You know, because that would make it a little bit more difficult, and it might be better if, you know, and Rebecca and I have talked, and that's one of those things where, you know, we probably need, the nice part about that money is you have until the end of the year 2023 to deal with it.
That's good.
So
That
the
was
last-
my next question was leading into how long do you have until?
Last year's money, CARES money, you had until like November to get rid of it. So there's a longer period to be able to look at it, but, and quite frankly, I can tell you that there's places that are all over the boards as far as, there's places that are using it to recover costs for law enforcement. There's places that are using whatever those costs might have been, I don't know. But there's places that are using it to cover costs of lost revenues, you know, and we haven't had a chance to even sit down and look at that. We know that we opened up a new water treatment plant, and then all of a sudden one of our biggest users stopped, and then another one stopped, and then another one stopped, and so then the amount of water we actually sold, but yet at the same time, the formula for determining whether or not you had lost revenues looks at your 2019 budget, you know, and then compares it. So, you know, timing wise, it didn't work out good, but theoretically there might be a way that you could do that. And then, you know, places they're talking about trying to find ways to cover the amounts and then turning around and using that money for whatever they want to use it for. You know, which, you know, for me, you know, one of the things that really surprised me up front was that we could use it for infrastructure. You know, because we have a couple of these odd little, actually I asked the question, can we use it on a railroad crossing? And I think that they talked about water, they talked about sewer, those kind of infrastructures. I don't know that they're gonna let you use it on roads and curb and gutter and stuff like that, but who knows, you know, the guidance changes every once in a while. But at the same time, we know we have this water line issue. We know that we have a very interesting, I see Jay sitting back there. Actually, I want to talk to you afterwards if you want to stick around. But we have an interesting sewer issue out at Superior Industries where, you know, there may be an opportunity to try to fix that. Iowa Avenue needs to be done. We know we have a stormwater issue that popped up along the road ditch by the Morris Grand Hotel, and their parking lot flooded a few years back and stuff like that. So there are some little infrastructure projects that don't have the normal funding like we do with special assessments in a neighborhood. And so that might be a great use of it. And then one of the things I talked to Whitney about is the simpler we make it, the better we are, because we have to get audited. And if you have a lot of complex little deals and stuff like that, a lot of T's and to cross and I's to dot to make sure you're complying with all the federal rules and regulations. So the simplest thing might be to do a couple infrastructure projects, but you know, I've seen what the county's been talking about for daycares, and I'm actually very interested in that, because I think,
Yeah, I
you
think
know,
it's a big issue with, and especially I think, drawing people into our city. I mean, if you're gonna take a job at Superior, Westmore, or whatever, and you can't find daycare, you know, you might have to turn it down and not come, or maybe.
well, and you
not
want your
live in Morris,
community, you know,
or-
like I said at the county meeting, you want your community to grow, and if you actually have families that are deciding to not have kids because they can't find a place for a daycare, you know, that is a big infrastructure need that we have, and it's gonna take many solutions, and I think they have one that, you know, the funding for it might be a unique opportunity that you're never ever gonna have again. So we'll definitely look at
Yeah,
that.
well, that's good. I think I just wanted to bring that up so that we're aware of it too, that as a city, that we think it's important. And, you know, we have a lot of other projects we can use this money on too that are important too, to help a lot of people with some of the infrastructure too. So just keep it in the discussions would be awesome. Thank you.
Yep.
I seen in your report, Blaine, that Alexandria was considering drought water restrictions. Wondering if that's not a discussion we should probably start having here
Yeah, I think
as
we
well.
need to look at it, just from the nature of, you know, it's really interesting, because it's not clear in the state information that we have if we're mandated to implement water restrictions. Because I know Alexandria did, I know some other places are doing it, but it didn't really come out. It says you have to follow your water management plans, and we've been looking at them, and it isn't clear in the water management plans whether or not we're supposed to be implementing, you know, restrictions on watering in Morris. And it would come down to things like watering your grass. I know, like Alex, they went to every odd even houses could water, and then not washing your car and things like that. You know, at the same time, you know, Ryan keeps a real close eye on the aquifer and the water levels that we have, and what we're actually dealing with in our water system.
Well, we've gotten missed. I mean, outside of the shot we had the other night, we've gotten missed on a lot of different rains, and I guess I'd like to see
Yep.
us be a little
Yeah.
proactive.
So we're looking at that, and we'll let you know if we believe that has to happen.
I mean, that would be just off the measurements of the aquifer, would be to decide whether we're gonna do something like that. Was there stuff from the state that
Yeah, the
says-
state of Minnesota they're in the drought warning stage, which when the drought warning stage takes place, then they implement their drought committee, I think is what it's called. And then they start looking at all the things that have to happen. And so then we actually we got a notice from the it wasn't actually addressed. Normally, if you get something from the state of Minnesota that rises to the level that you better sit up and do something about it, it's gonna be addressed to the mayor. And they're gonna say, Mayor Geese, City of Morris, you need to do this. And it was more like an informational thing that got sent out in the mail. Actually, I didn't get it. You know, it got sent out in the mail, and it's like, you know, look at your water management plans, because we're in this phase. And I think the last time our water management plan was done was maybe 2000.
When we did the water.
Yeah, so it's not clear, and so actually we've been reaching back out to the state to find out what are we required to do, because You know, there are places that don't have the water. You know, if you look at some of the places, they do not have the water to be able to put it out because their water sources, City of St. Cloud gets their water from the Mississippi River, and the Mississippi River is way down. Although there's big shot out water, I think that happened just recently, that's probably gonna be coming down through. So we're looking at it, and when the time comes, according to our plan, you know, there's certain things that the city manager has the authority to implement some things, but ideally, you know, we bring it back to the council and find out what you wanna do.
When was the last, I can remember one time we had a water restriction where you couldn't water lawns in town, I was trying to remember when that was. It was in the seventies, I think.
There was one in 1988.
Yeah, I can't remember.
1988 is the last one I remember.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, so definitely, we're looking at that.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else about the newsletter? Or other business? Any informational items? Nothing else?
Nothing else.
All right, going once, going twice, meeting adjourned.